Love a close game. Gulliver, you can follow his journey out on Twitter at Ben Gulliver as well as at SI.com. Hey, man, it looked a week ago like this thing was going to go quietly into the night, and certainly the NBA and Cleveland and LeBron, they were all big winners in this Game 7, sort of magical television night on Sunday night, right?
Oh, that was the best Game 7 I think the NBA's had, in at least almost, I'd say 30 years. I mean, going back to 1984. And when you look at the superstars who are headlining it with LeBron James and Stephen Curry, you look at the 73 win season being on the line, the first 3-1 collapse in the finals that has ever happened. You look at just LeBron James' superlative performance in terms of playing the best basketball of his career and ending Cleveland's curse after 52 years. I mean, there was a million storylines in that building, and Kyrie Irving delivers kind of a magical three-pointer. And LeBron seals it with the free throw. So it was a great ending to a great series, and it really was, high drama, lots of tension in the building.
For me being on the Baltimore angle, and I have so many friends from Cleveland who've waited for them to win, and, I've been sort of anti-LeBron since the decision and all that, and I know he came back using your periodical to do that a couple and the parade and LeBron and polishing up his star and what he represents, that I don't know there'll be enough criticism to go around for Golden State. I mean, this has really been an ugly week for them on the backside of almost blowing it against.
Able to get going in Game 5. Pure point, that he tends to like to after Game 7. His head was down.
What it takes is if you don't shoot well, you're probably not going to win if you're Golden. And they didn't win, right?
Early in the finals, they had better counters. I mean, there's the ball movement, it's the cutting, it's the lockdown defense, it's the energy, it's their amazing home court crowd. Like, they had a lot of things going for them. But as the finals unfolded, role players fell by the wayside, whether it was guys, all of a sudden their depth starts kind of getting, cut into. And then what were they left with? And, for Cleveland, LeBron James was all over the court. He led the series in points, rebounds, assists, steals, blocks. I mean, he always had an answer to no matter what the question was. You're mentioning, I think the answer to basically every question for Golden State was just, huck up three-pointers. And it got them pretty far. It got them to Game 7 of the finals, this year. They needed to have a little bit more diversity in their offensive approach, and they needed to have much better defensive intensity, especially on the road during the finals in Games 3 and 6. And that stuff was just not there. So I think they ended up getting exposed a little bit in terms of being this so-called invincible team that we thought during the regular season. They never were quite able to recapture that form. They gutted out a lot of wins in the playoffs, especially against the Thunder. But when push came to shove, there was a lot of bricks down the stretch of Game 7, and they really needed to have more offensively than, besides these long threes that you're mentioning.
Ben Gulliver covering all things NBA for Sports Illustrated. Headed back to the East Coast for the draft later on as well. It feels like it never ends. None of these sports end. And certainly this magic for the Cavaliers has been a long time coming. I know you've chronicled all this from decisions to returns. This has been an incredibly unlikely story, right? I mean, the day after the decision and the full-page ad and Dan Gilbert, to think that this was possible in any way at that point, it really does rewrite history now, doesn't it?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not sure I've ever seen a bridge become unburned quite like this, right? I mean, didn't it seem like those bridges were just completely torched, and instead LeBron goes home conquering hero, and he completes the circle that's been going on for more than half of his life. I've kind of been challenging people star than LeBron James. I mean, there's not very many of them. This guy was famous when he was 15 years old.
Peyton Manning would be the other one, right? I mean, and there's another guy that won a few months ago, right?
Yeah, and he was, LeBron's on the cover of Sports Illustrated at 17. He's winning state titles at age 15 in Ohio. The hype is growing around him, for more than half of his life at this point. And he was able to do it. And not only have done and end the curse and all those things, but he also did it on his own terms. Remember, he used his leverage and his ability as a player to kind of construct this roster how he wanted it. Dion Waiters is gone. Tristan Thompson gets a max contract. Kevin Love gets traded in for Andrew Wiggins. LeBron had his hand in all those things, and also even the coaching decisions too. David Black going out mid-season in favor of handprints all over it.
Dude, I saw the best tweet after the game because, I mean, when Cleveland gets a parade, for a Baltimore guy, it's a beautiful thing, Ben, to just be snarky for a little while and have some fun. I mean, I am happy that they won, but I thought the best thing was owner of the year, LeBron James. Executive of the year, LeBron James. Coach of the year, LeBron James. And I thought, but they won, and that's what happens when you win.
Oh, he's the true franchise player. I mean, he really is. He's the one guy in the league who actually carries himself like a franchise, emphasis on franchise, not player. And so, he did it on his terms, and I think that's why this is going to be remembered as the greatest moment of his career to date, bar none. It's certainly. And I think a big reason why is because he actually captured the hearts and minds. I mean, you mentioned that you're kind of a LeBron James hater. There's lots of people out there who are like that, but there's also a lot of people who are just sort of agnostic, who look at LeBron and say, oh, well, he's not that interesting because he's the biggest, fastest, and strongest guy, so of course he should be winning, right? I think what they saw here in this series was LeBron actually cast as the underdog against a very talented 73-win team. Discipline, his mental fortitude, and his leadership ability in sort of pulling the best out of his teammates, and able to pull an unbelievable upset. And I think that this one, considering the circumstances, going home, undoing the decision, making all those things right, I think this is the first time in his career where LeBron has really connected with people, a lot of people emotionally, like getting to their heart, that he hasn't done it before. I mean, let's be honest, the Heat were kind of Hollywood as hell, right? I mean, they were easy to kind of just say, oh, they're the most talented team.
They were like the Monkees, dude, or like the Partridge Family. They were sort of put together.
Yeah, and they had the nickname the Heatles, right? So it's like if you're a Miami Heat fan, you love them. If you're everybody else, you're sort of like, well, they found a loophole to kind of put together this super team. And so they never really appealed to people's emotions in quite the same way as I think that this championship will do it. And also, just because it's the first in Cleveland, I don't see his career comparing to this. And I think for that reason, this finals, the way he did it in games 5, 6, and 7, dragging the Cavaliers back into the series, it's going to be remembered as his greatest accomplishment, the peak, the pinnacle, the ultimate triumph of his career.
Ben Golliver covers all things NBA for Sports Illustrated. You can follow his journey out on Twitter at Ben Golliver as well. And, for you being a guy who was at that game, I've been at some, I was at the Drive game in 1986, Ben, right? So, I mean, as a fan, I sat there on the 50-yard line in Cleveland. I've been there for some great Cleveland moments and, when they beat the Orioles in the I've seen a lot of different things that have been in and around Cleveland, but that swat away of LeBron James on the road in the Sea of Gold, it's got to kind of be up there with Michael Jordan hitting that shot in Utah, right, where you see the fans sort of look aghast, and certainly all the air went out of that. Everybody showed up last week thinking it was just going to happen in Game 5. I don't think anyone really thought that Game 7, if it got to that point.
Yeah. The Warriors were favored by all the statistical models all the way up until the bitter end, and LeBron just kind of threw those things out the window, and that block really was
a game or a Cleveland game that's
hard. They San Antonio, they obviously have to carefully go nuts a little bit for an approach in terms of trying